My decisions are final. I'm the one in charge here, and my decisions are final. If you don't follow my rules, we're getting a divorce. Even though my husband was having an affair, he still tried to control me. Why should I always obey him? Enough was enough. Fine, let's get a divorce then, I declared, determined to make him understand my contributions to our life together. I transferred all our loans into his name. My name is Bell, and I'm 36 years old. I work as a systems engineer. It's been 6 years since I married my husband, Derek. We first met at work when the company I worked for hired his firm for a project. At the time, I was just a temporary worker there. He was kind to me, and as we spent more time together outside of work, our relationship grew. Eventually, he proposed, and I said yes. After getting married, I decided to quit my job. Engineering was a demanding career, physically exhausting, mentally draining, and the pay wasn't great. I worried that if I continued working under such pressure, I wouldn't have enough time to nurture our relationship. So I transitioned into freelancing, which allowed me more flexibility to take care of our home and spend time with Derek. At first, my earnings were minimal, but with my engineering background, I gradually built a reputation. My client base grew, and so did my income. I was surprised at how quickly my earnings increased and felt grateful to my husband for supporting us during the early days when I wasn't making much. I put effort into making our home a warm and happy place. Though I wasn't the best cook, I experimented with new recipes every day, hoping to please him. Thank you for cooking and cleaning. It really helps me, Derek would say, and his appreciation meant everything to me. In the beginning, our marriage was built on mutual respect, and life was good. But as years passed, things started to change. One day, out of the blue, Derek said, "Isn't it time we moved into a new house?" I was caught off guard. He had never been good at saving money, so I hesitated. Should we save a bit more before making such a big commitment? I suggested. What are you talking about? I make a decent income, don't I? Haven't we lived comfortably since we got married? He replied confidently. I wanted to tell him that our financial stability wasn't just because of his income, but I held my tongue. While Derek did give me money for household expenses, he always spent his own allowance before payday. To ensure we stayed financially secure, I secretly saved portions of my income and used it to supplement our budget. In the early days of our marriage, I was grateful for his earnings, which is why I never mentioned that I was now making more money than him. I didn't want to bruise his ego. Even when I felt like we were overspending, I remained quiet, believing he simply lacked a clear understanding of his finances. But then he started talking about building a brand new house, and I felt trapped. He seemed so excited that I struggled to find a way to stop him. "What kind of house do you want?" I asked, hoping to subtly guide him toward a more affordable option. However, with each passing conversation, his demands increased. "If we include everything you want, it's going to be very expensive," I pointed out. "That's fine. It's a once-in-a-lifetime purchase. My income should cover, right?" he said with unwavering confidence. I couldn't understand where his certainty was coming from. I regretted keeping my financial contributions a secret for so long. But now, I had no choice. I had to tell him. "Derek, about our household expenses. I've been contributing a significant amount from my own income as well." The truth unfolds. "I'm telling the truth," I insisted. For some reason, my husband refused to believe me. "Come on, stop stalling," he scoffed. "I'm not lying." I repeated, frustrated. I had hoped he would consider purchasing a more affordable house, but in the end, he ignored my concerns. He took out a hefty loan using his salary, stretching our finances to the limit. Initially, I thought we were managing our expenses well, but as time passed, his spending spiraled out of control. Derek began splurging on luxury brand clothing and expensive watches. Almost every night, he went out drinking with his colleagues. Though he worked overtime to compensate, his reckless spending only worsened. Despite everything, he remained determined to build a house. And in the end, he made it happen. "Wow, this place is incredible," he said, beaming with pride. "Owning a house like this is proof of success, don't you think?" He wasn't wrong. The house was stunning, spacious, elegant, and undeniably comfortable. My new workspace was larger than before, allowing me to fit a bigger desk, making work much more convenient. A well-organized environment helped boost my productivity, and for that, I was grateful. Yet, no matter how beautiful the house was, the heavy mortgage weighed on my mind. Derek didn't seem concerned, but the reality was that we had taken on a long-term loan that required monthly payments. The house was in his name, yet his reckless spending habits left his bank account nearly empty by the end of each month. Because of this, I had no choice but to transfer my earnings into his account just to cover the mortgage. Frustration slowly built within me. One evening, I decided to address the issue. "Don't you think you've been spending too much lately?" I asked carefully. "We need to be mindful of things like the mortgage." Derek frowned. "What are you even talking about? We've been living just fine since buying the house, haven't we? If everything is working, there's no problem." He dismissed my concerns so easily, as if I was worrying over nothing. "You're always stressing over the smallest details," he added. "If you don't have enough money, that's because you're bad at managing it. That's not my issue." His words stunned me. "Wait a minute." I shot back. "I stretch every penny of the household budget you give me. On top of that, I use my own earnings to help cover the mortgage and other expenses. So please, don't speak to me like this." But instead of understanding, he snapped. "What's wrong with you? And don't act like you're doing something extraordinary," he shouted. "The money you put in isn't even that much, so stop acting high and mighty. The person who earns the most is the one who has the final say. That's me. So don't try to tell me what to do." I stood there, speechless. This wasn't the man I had married. Derek had once been kind and considerate, but now our home was filled with nothing but tension. Conversations between us had become rare, and at times we didn't even acknowledge each other's presence. He worked late more than ever, constantly taking on overtime. Night after night, he returned home long past dinner. Was this how our marriage would continue? Living under the same roof, but barely speaking? If so, maybe divorce would be the better option. And yet, I still held on to a sliver of hope that things could be repaired. After much thought, I decided to take the first step toward fixing our relationship. But before I could, my husband shattered that hope in an instant. It happened on a weekday. I had gone into town to buy a birthday gift for a friend. Derek was supposed to be at work, but to my shock, I saw him walking casually down the street with a young woman I didn't recognize. They looked too comfortable with each other, too familiar. My heart sank. The thought struck me immediately. He's cheating on me. Needing to know the truth, I hired a private investigator. 3 weeks later, I received the results. At the detective agency, I learned what I had feared most. Derek was having an affair. His mistress was a co-worker, and their relationship had been going on for nearly 2 years. Everything made sense now. His excessive spending, his constant late nights, his indifference toward me. It was all because he had someone else. Rage coursed through me. After all the insults, after making me feel like I was the problem, he was the one betraying me. I felt like a fool forever protecting his pride and our marriage. I had made up my mind. I was done without a taste of his own medicine. I couldn't sit back and do nothing anymore. Rushing home, I found my husband lounging on the couch, engrossed in a sports program. Without hesitation, I stepped between him and the TV, holding up the evidence of his affair. "Care to explain this?" I demanded. For a split second, he looked startled, but then, as if he had already rehearsed this moment, his expression shifted into something smug and dismissive. "Oh, that?" He glanced at the photos nonchalantly. "That's Meg, my new wife." I blinked, stunned. "You're what?" "Well, now that you know, there's no reason to keep up the act," he said with a shrug. "Truth is, you're not needed anymore." His words hit me like a slap. "What the hell are you saying?" "Honestly," he leaned back with a smirk, "I don't need you in my life anymore. But Meg doesn't want to do house chores, so you can stay and take care of them for her." I felt my blood boil. "Are you insane? I would never do that." His face darkened, his temper flaring. "I'm the one making the money in this house, so my word is final. If you can't do as you're told, we're getting a divorce." Even after betraying me, He still had the audacity to try and control me. And why exactly should I listen to you? I shot back. Fine, let's get divorced, he snapped. You caught me, so there's no point dragging this out. We'll just split up and be done with it. His quick acceptance surprised me, but before I could say anything, he added, just don't forget, you need to help me transfer the names on the utility bills and the car loans. We just signed up for them. After all, I didn't hesitate. I made sure every loan was transferred to his name before filing for divorce. He probably thought it was all over. But for me, this was just the beginning. The day after the divorce was finalized, I settled into my new apartment, already enjoying the freedom of my new life. Then the calls started coming in. Since my ex-husband still hadn't paid me any compensation, I hadn't blocked his number yet. When I finally picked up, his voice sounded anxious. We need to talk, he said. Curious, I agreed to meet him at a cafe. But when I arrived, I was greeted by an unwelcome sight. He had brought his mistress along. I scoffed. Well, don't you two look happy together? Something was clearly wrong. He looked uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze. Then he finally spoke. Why didn't you tell me that a huge amount of money is being deducted every month? The mortgage, the car loans, utilities. Why are the expenses so high? What kind of trick are you pulling? I tilted my head, feigning innocence. What do you mean? I divorced you and left that house, so it's only natural that all those expenses are yours now. His expression twisted in frustration. This is fraud. I'll sue you. I let out a dry laugh. Fraud? Are you serious? I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. You're the one who never bothered to understand our finances. I showed you all the documents, didn't I? The house loan was always in your name. Until now, I was the one covering the cost with my income. He frowned, as if struggling to process my words. But how could you afford to put that much money into our account with your small earnings? I smiled, savoring the moment. Small earnings? I repeated, I'm a freelance engineer, Derek. I make around $200,000 a year. His jaw practically hit the floor. He looked completely blindsided. But I wasn't done yet. I haven't even properly claimed compensation yet. I continued, my voice steady. But I will through a lawyer. His face twisted in disbelief. You want compensation? I'm just making a legitimate claim. I said, coolly. Oh, and I'll also be filing against your mistress for the emotional distress you both caused me. Within days, I received compensation from both of them. As for his mistress, she was horrified when she learned that Derek had never been paying off the loans with his own money. The next day, she vanished from his life, leaving him to deal with his financial mess alone. Their so-called love crumbled as quickly as the money ran out. Now, my ex-husband lives a miserable, solitary existence, buried under debt, struggling to get by and bouncing between work and home. But instead of owning up to his mistakes, he started spreading rumors at work, claiming he was a victim and that his mistress had taken advantage of him. No one believed him. Both of them had destroyed their own reputations, and as his financial troubles grew worse, he was demoted, his salary cut. It was all his doing. And honestly, he deserved every bit of it. As for me, at first, I was nervous about moving into my high-rise apartment alone. But now, I find peace in my independence. I have no interest in romance or marriage anytime soon, but that doesn't mean I want to be alone forever. Someday, if I meet someone truly deserving, I hope we can build a relationship founded on respect and support. But for now, I'm focused on myself, on living freely, working hard, and enjoying the life I built. And it feels amazing